What do most Fortune 500 executives have in common? They learned important lessons on the fields and courts of their high school and collegiate sports teams. This is true for both men and women. Ernst & Young found that a whopping 94% of women holding a C-suite position played sports. Their wins and losses shaped their habits and who they would become. Join me on my journey to sit with some of the brightest executives in the world as we discuss how sports shape their professional trajectory. In partnership with Chief Executive Magazine, the voice of America's CEO community, I'm your host, Don Yeager, and this is Corporate Competitor Podcast. With me for today's episode is Netflix CFO Spencer Neumann. Spence played football at Harvard and was a two-time All-Ivy defensive end. The leadership lessons he learned on the field prepared him for several senior positions at the Walt Disney Company and later as CFO of Activision Blizzard, the popular video game company best known for Candy Crush. Today, Spence and I serve alongside each other on the Make-A-Wish National Board, and I never tire of hearing him share his heart for the young people we serve. You often hear me say to our guests, I took pages of notes, and now you can download those notes on corporatecompetitorpodcast.com/110 so that those notes, the questions, and the reflections can be part of your personal growth plan.
So many things in life are built by great people, whether it's kind of winning or building something amazing. For it to thrive, it has to be lived every day. Companies that get it right and keep it relevant are those that realize that it's a living and breathing thing. Things change, for as good as they are, then you have to change and evolve. And it's super challenging and hard, but when you're doing it with great people and with those shared values, it's also kind of super rewarding and fun.
Spence, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Don. It's great to be here. I'm looking forward to catching up with you.
I look at your business career, what you've achieved and the places you've had the chance to be, Walt Disney, ABC, Activision Blizzard, now Netflix. You've served in a whole myriad of senior leadership and executive roles. When did you first realize leadership was something that you wanted to aspire to?
Honestly, I'm not sure I know when that all started. I probably backed into it. I'm an introvert by nature, so I've been fighting that all my life. I also always want to have impact. And I found pretty early on that to have the most impact, whether it's in the classroom or on the field or in business, there's some leadership component that was required, and it meant me kind of pushing myself out of my shell. So over time, I got more comfortable with it, but I think it started as frankly, a necessary means to an end. It's always interesting to me, amazing, just generally how formative our early experiences are to our lives. Ocean Township High School football was one of those for me. We were a New Jersey club on Jersey Shore, so the first week of practice every year wasn't on the grass or the turf. It was actually on the beach, beach and the boardwalk, conditioning, figuring out who really wanted to be on the team and who had the kind of will to get through the season. We were probably a classic example of a team that played above our weight. We weren't the biggest, the fastest, the most skilled, any of those things, but we played as a team and we kind of knew our roles. We played with grit and we always felt we were more prepared and more conditioned than the folks we were playing against. That experience of the importance of team over individual, doing the work and being in the work, having that shared objective and the courage to overcome challenges and to be prepared. That carries through in so many things that we do, whether it's in sports or in business.
I love that reference that you were more prepared than others. Who set that standard? Was there a leader, a coach, a mentor, someone that taught you the importance of being more well-prepared and what benefit that would ultimately earn you?
Certainly on the football field, it was my high school coach, Coach Conti. He was a guy that came into our program a few years before I came into high school. We had a pretty lackluster program. And in his first year, he turned it around. He just always had that focus, preparation mentality, and simplicity I'm sure we had a lot of plays back then, but the ones I remember are sweep right and sweep left. And we just ran them over and over and over again. And it wasn't like we were robots, but once it came to game time, like it was just so drilled into you. And then you could adapt as you needed when it really mattered. There's a documentary about 10 years ago, Jiro Dreams of Sushi,
Yeah.
about that master craftsman in Jiro. And every day is about trying to get a little bit better in the craft of sushi. Coach Connie was a little bit like that with the simplicity of football. And Reed Hastings, my co-CEO, could teach a master class on it. Simplicity and focus and execution, that continual pursuit of excellence. I think I'm still in grade school on this front, but I'm working at it.
Well, I love that concept, simplicity, focus, just get better. You don't have to have a playbook that's a foot thick. You just have to be able to do what you do really, really well. Often a lost discussion point in business. We think we have to be all over the place. The truth is we can be what we need to be and just be really good at it. Is there been a place in your business growth where you've tried to simplify things for your team, somewhere where you use the very same principles that you learned to make your team better?
It's constant. We're always working at it because the best leaders and folks in business are ones that are simplifiers as opposed to complicators. The world is complicated and there's a lot of lack of clarity. When you can boil that down, simplify, and create clarity for folks, that's super powerful. I'm always trying to learn from those before me. It's everything from what are the metrics you track in the business? Do you track 100 of them, or you try to boil it down to 2 or 3 that really matter? And then there's always like supporting things and saying no versus saying yes. Saying no is a lot harder than saying yes. It's always tempting to say yes and go after the shiny new object. The hard thing is to kind of have the discipline and focus to get better every day at the thing that you've been doing for 10 years, but you'll be a lot better 5 or 10 years from now than you were 5 or 10 years ago if you keep pushing at it.
Sweep right.
Yeah.
So the pictures from your high school yearbook, one of my favorite parts of our research, we actually have here today a corporate competitor first. For all the research we have done over time, we have never had on this podcast the president of the World Famine Relief Club. So anything you remember about what it was that would have caused you in New Jersey to have either created or at least chosen to lead the World Famine Relief Club?
Don, I listened to some of your podcasts. I know I am not top of the list of impressiveness because you've got the former president of the World Family Relief Club. That's for sure. This was the late 80s. I don't recall a ton of it. I don't think the club exists anymore.
So there's not an alumni
I
association.
don't
You're
think
not
so. I don't think
constantly.
so. It was really about wanting to give back broadly at that age and learning to be a global citizen and trying to find a vehicle for that. The intent was right. I'm not sure how effective we were with through the World Famine Relief Club.
I know you through Make-A-Wish. You and I have had the opportunity for a number of years now to serve together on the national board. World Famine Relief wasn't a keeper for you, but Make-A-Wish has been. What's drawn you to it and what keeps you fired up about that cause?
Make-A-Wish was more thoughtful and intentional than that first club. But yeah, I guess I've always had a soft spot for kids that are sick or don't have the opportunity to just be kids to, play or have fun or learn and grow up like other kids. I have both a niece and a nephew that have cerebral palsy. There's like that imbalance in the world when kids are sick, and it just seems deeply unfair. So 12 years ago, my wife and I had just had our second child. We have 2 kids now. They're 12 and 14, and they're both healthy. And at the time, we just felt blessed. We had these great, healthy kids, but I also kind of felt like wanted to give back. Maybe it's guilt. I don't know what it was at the time, but I wanted to focus on children, and Make-A-Wish was kind of the perfect landing for that. The impact of a wish. I mean, Don, we live this. It's not just on the wish child, giving a critically ill child some hope and something to shoot for, but on their families. The experience that the wish brings to the family when they need some joy in their life, when it's so desperately needed. And on top of all that, improving medical outcomes, the combination of all it. So it was the right time. It's the right mission. I've been involved ever since, and so glad I have been. And then I also get to meet cool folks like you, which is an added benefit.
Oh, well, I will flip that one. One of the things about that opportunity is how many of the other board members are also folks who came to it for whatever their reason was. But once you get involved, the heart value of what being in that room brings is just fulfilling in its own way.
For sure.
You might also remember this I saw in the yearbook. They chose you the most likely to succeed in your class. And obviously, you went on to Harvard, took your football talents, and the sports information department at Harvard shared with us a story in which you were interviewed about a game in which you felt like you really understood what success looked like or success felt like. The story was actually about a game you lost. You all lost to Army, and yet you felt that success had been achieved that day.
Yeah, Harvard Army. As you rightly point out, I played at Harvard, which is not necessarily the bastion of football greatness. No offense to Harvard and no offense to Coach Tim Murphy, who is now the current coach. When I was there as Coach Joe Restick, Coach Murphy's done an amazing job with that program since. We knew Army was bigger, stronger, faster. I remember having a beeline on the ball carrier first play of the game. I thought, a pretty good angle, and I saw this blocker for Army coming, and he saw me, and he had maybe 3 or more inches on me and 30 plus pounds. So I figured I get around this guy, get to the ball. I turned on another gear and he had a couple more gears beyond me. So he was bigger, stronger, faster. And I knew it was going to be a long day. But like, I love kickoff.
Yeah.
It's just a sprint to make a hit. You don't have to think too much. And back in those days, it was fun when your body could handle it to just take out a little aggression. But we were like a big underdog against Army at the time. We were Division One AA. This is our chance to play a real Division One team. And yeah, we lost, but it was that sense of achievement and accomplishment and building that confidence to overcome odds. And we saw glimpses of that day against Army. We came together as a team. We played our hearts out. This will sound defensive, but there was one, I think, pretty bad call on a fourth down late in the game. We kind of knew that we were that one play away from winning that game. So it's just kind of a bond you have forever, knowing you did something that no one believed you could do. And they're friendships that have become lifelong friendships.
We'd love to talk about having great teammates. How did some of the things you learned by having great teammates and being one affect the way you look at teammates in your work today?
Gosh, for teammates, it's a combination of mutual respect, trust, shared objectives, and knowing your role. When that all comes together and accountability, that makes for a diversity of talent, frankly. Also, all those things make for great teammates and a great team because it goes beyond the person. When those things come together, it's more than just a collection of individuals, but it's folks that trust one another. They've been through it together. They have a shared sense of accomplishment. Yeah, that's, I guess, the equation.
I love it. I think that is such a valuable takeaway about the participation in athletics. We get to learn what it is to be a great teammate. We get to practice in our own right our efforts to become one. And if we can do that for a lifetime, we'll always find a team to be on. Football, it's the ultimate team sport. I'm biased. It's my sport too. You can have 10 out of 11 players doing the exact right thing. One player has to be going in the wrong direction and everything blows up. What did playing a sport that requires that much interconnection teach you that you were able to use later as a leader?
I'm biased towards football as well, but the team or the organization or the company is bigger than any one individual. It takes this amazing group of people working together with a shared objective to accomplish something. Certainly, there's individuals can have huge impact, but it's always more than that person. And you need to build teams with that diversity of talent and capabilities. I mean, you can't have 11 quarterbacks on the field. If they're the most talented in the world, there's not much of a team if you don't have your offensive lineman and defensive lineman and your kicker and your punter, et cetera, et cetera. So you need the full team working together. And that's when it becomes something more than just the person.
You were the recipient of the Robert F. Kennedy Award on your team, which the Kennedy Award is given annually to the member of the varsity football team who, through desire, determination, willingness to work, made himself a valuable member of the team and thereby has gained the respect and admiration of his teammates and coaches. You clearly defined yourself in that way as being able to serve others. You were that servant leader on the field. How did that translate to you in business?
I'm not the fastest. I don't have the most skills. I'm not the biggest. I'm not the smartest on the field or in business. I apply myself. So it's a combination of being in the work, determination, perseverance, and a little bit of grit. It's the walk, I guess, kind of leadership that I try to perform. Once you get to higher levels than I ever played in sports, it takes all that plus the amazing talent that I didn't have. To be clear, I didn't have the full package, but I try to apply that in business, be prepared, have that determination and perseverance, and get the best out of what I can bring to my team or my colleagues to have impact and do my part for the organization.
Twice so far in this conversation, you've used the phrase being in the work. Walk me through that. What does that mean to you?
So much of this is about the pursuit of excellence and continuing to get better. To do that, you have to be in it to know whether what the team is doing and creating and solving for, it's excellent. If it's just a leader sitting in an ivory tower, you get too detached from knowing what really is excellent and relevant and what matters to the customer and what matters to your shareholders. It's not just delegating just for the sake of, hey, now I've got a certain title, so I get to delegate. Of course, you need to have a level of leverage. Can't do everything, but you have to be enough in it to know what's excellent and to keep pushing forward.
We had Ed Bastian, the CEO of Delta, on. He actually has an internal meter in which he commits himself to only being in the office a certain percentage of his time. He wants to spend the rest of that time in the galleys of airplanes, meeting with crew and airport lounges or wherever it is where he's getting a chance to actually be out and not in the ivory tower. How do you make sure that you are in the work? Do you have a model for yourself that allows you to keep yourself disconnected from that ivory tower?
I'm a bit more of an internal person than an external person for Netflix. I've had other roles where I've been a little bit more external and you get out with the customer, with partners more than I probably do in this role. So I do that to some degree, but at least even internally, it's little things, not just meeting with, let's say, my direct reports and kind of channeling out everything through there. It's like, how do I, when I'm meeting with other folks, especially in days coming out of a global pandemic, meeting folks in their offices instead of my office, doing enough of the one-on-ones, doing enough of the skip level meetings, doing enough of the town hall Q&A get-togethers, anyone can ask a question. It's having that direct dialogue with folks regularly. So you're not just receiving filtered information as part of it.
There's true damage done to organizations when that's all their leaders are getting. Harvard versus Yale, nicknamed the game. Your senior season in that game, you knew right from the beginning that your team wasn't ready. What did you learn in that experience?
We always talked about we had 2 seasons at Harvard. There was the first 9 games, and then there was Harvard Yale. That was a big one. It's the end of the year. It's with the biggest crowd. And that day it just didn't feel right. When sometimes something feels off and the intensity doesn't match the situation. I don't know, when you're doing something for too long and it becomes going through the motions, and that day somehow felt like that and it shouldn't have. It's a reminder that, life is hard, business is hard, athletics are hard, and you need to show up. And we came out flat that day, and you never get that back. So you can't phone it in life. Even just as a parent, it's one of the things I think about with my kids. Life is hard and they're not going to be handed everything. And you have to have that level of show up for the day and have an optimism and grit and determination, being self-aware of it and knowing that it takes energy and intention. And let's be really clear, I've got my off days, I've got off hours. And now at Netflix, we have a feedback culture. So folks let me know when I'm not showing up great. I hear it from all levels of the organization. So I've got my share of flaws, but it doesn't matter where it comes from. If it's informed and constructive, it's super important to be listening, to farm for dissent. We're trying to make the best decisions all the time. And part of that is also being great colleagues, great people. And you get better when you hear that feedback. It's the gift.
Yeah.
It hurts. I'm still not great at it. I get defensive and it's a hard thing. But if you view it as, hey, this is a way for me personally to get better as a person, as a leader, then you kind of channel it to a positive. And then it's just finding things in life that you have passion and love for so that it kind of makes it a little bit easier than if it's just things you hate doing, then it gets really hard.
In our company, we say all the time, feedback is the breakfast of champions.
There you go.
Those who want to achieve at a really high level actually seek and appreciate it as opposed to get defensive in its presence. One of the things we talk about a lot is attention to detail related to culture. When looking at successful organizations, Netflix, you've made reference to Reed, and he has been really open with sharing the 127-page culture deck, which I mean, I've probably referred to 100 times in presentations over the years because it is such a great document. You've seen the power of corporate culture. Talk to me about how cultures are built and what can be done to continue to allow them to thrive.
So many things in life, they're built by great people with shared values, shared objective, whether it's kind of winning or building something amazing or some other kind of achievement. For it to thrive, it has to be lived every day. It's always evolving and it's not static. And I think the folks in companies that get it right and keep it relevant are those that realize that it's a living and breathing thing. For as much as I love Coach Connie, if he was coaching my kids today with the way he was coaching me then, I'm not sure it would work. Things change, for as good as they are then, you have to change and evolve. And in the case of Netflix, we've got a high performance culture, but we also have fun. It's that continuous seeking of excellence, but it's hard work.
Yeah.
It's about trying to entertain the world, which is hugely ambitious. It's also super challenging and hard, but when you're doing it with great people and with those shared values, it's also kind of super rewarding and fun. It's just something you have to work at and it has to keep evolving.
One question we've asked several guests recently has been around the concept of momentum. As sports fans, we see it in play. We can identify when it's happening. We know when it's running against us.
Mhm.
I'd love to get your thought.
I mean, look, momentum is real until it isn't. Whether it's in the middle of a game in sports or with companies, it's always fascinating to me, like how they're perceived as winners or they have that positive momentum and then how it can shift for either real or perceived reasons. It shifts and it shifts faster now, certainly on the company side, than it ever did because of social and virality of conversation. When things feel like they're hitting on all cylinders, it does give everyone a bigger skip in their step and moving faster. We go back to my Disney days and when we opened Shanghai Disney and we just had to get things going. And then all of a sudden, what seemed like it was impossible, like things just start working.
Became almost a worldwide phenomenon.
Yeah, yeah. And certainly at Netflix, there's a lot of things that we have taken on in terms of getting more and more into commissioning our own original programming around the world. And then all of a sudden, when you see like these things hit, it was a bet.
Right.
We really commission content all around the world and try to tell stories from anywhere to everywhere and kind of upend the notion that global content is Hollywood content that's exported to countries around the world. It's something different from that. And then all of a sudden you have like a money heist or what we call La Casa de Papel coming out of Spain or Lupin from France or, Who Killed Sarah from Mexico or Squid Game from Korea. Like, holy cow, like this strategy bet basically builds on itself. Then you just see it happening faster and faster, but you can't count on it forever. And we're kind of now proving ourselves to the world again after some of the things we went through earlier in the year in terms of our slowdown. Just don't get lulled into some false sense of comfort when you're in the middle of positive momentum. When it's there, use it to your advantage, but know it's not going to last forever. And the really hard part is getting the momentum back.
John Maxwell, who's a speaker and a thought leader, calls momentum the great exaggerator in both directions.
Yeah.
It feels greater than sometimes it is. You mentioned Reed Hastings a couple of times. I've been fascinated by him for a long time. What's it been like in the 3.5 years you've been there to work with someone with a mind that runs like Reed's?
It's a great gift. I feel super fortunate to work with both Reed and Ted, frankly, because Reed's the founder, now is co-CEO. His constant pursuit of excellence and wanting to solve hard problems combined with just his depth of understanding and his ability to provide context and teach and bring people along, to me, is just a great combination. And Ted is the closest thing I've ever seen to an entrepreneur. They're such a great complement to one another. They're built similarly that way in terms of their ability to take on risk and take on change and adapt and be flexible and see around corners. So it's a learning experience. I feel uniquely fortunate to be able to work with both of them over the last few years.
I love it. You know, In a 30-year career in journalism, I've spent a little piece of almost every interview I've done asking great competitors, great coaches and winners that I've worked with, if they can identify one habit that they built into their daily routine that they believe gave them some kind of an advantage. Is there a habit in your daily routine that you think provides for you some level of strength?
Perseverance and adaptability. I'm not sure it's a daily habit. It's definitely a valued behavior. I've never viewed myself as being the best at anything, but I got a good bit of grit and determination and perseverance and a little bit of a chip on my shoulder. Combine that with a willingness to adjust and change based on the circumstances and prove my worth.
Where does that chip come from? I'm looking at your model. You've been so successful. I generally think of a chip on someone's shoulder as being that person that was the last one picked in kickball as a kid. I can't imagine that ever happening for you.
Now getting deep, like, I don't know. I lost my mom when I was 11. She didn't get a chance to see who I became, and I wanted to make her proud. It probably all starts there every day of like a little bit of like wanting to make sure that she's, that the little kid's making her proud.
Spence, there's a little bit of a light cast on who you are and why you've been so successful. And I want to thank you for taking the time today to be with us, to share a little of who you are and why you've been successful and for being a corporate competitor.
Great to be with you, Don. Thanks for making the time and thanks for having me.
So I've admitted a couple times in that interview my bias. Not only do I love our relationship at Make-A-Wish, but I'm a huge Spence Neumann fan. I'm an even greater fan today after having learned some of the lessons that he shared with us. Two that absolutely stood out was when he shared and discussed the idea that the best leaders, in his opinion, are simplifiers, not complicators. They are constantly looking for ways to take what it is that we collectively are being asked to do and make it simpler, not more difficult. Being a CFO and deciding what metrics do you track? Are you tracking 100 because you can? Or are you tracking 2 or 3 that matter and it will help give you guidance? What lines of business are you choosing to pursue? Are you chasing the shiny object? Or are you just doing even better the things that you have been doing and that you know work within the organization? Saying no is hard. The second lesson I really took from him is around the Netflix culture. In order for a culture to thrive, it has to be lived. We can put it up in a PowerPoint, we can have it as a sign on the wall, but cultures are not static. They are living and breathing things, and we have to continue to grow, adjust, and improve the culture that we have. What an honor it was to get that time to learn from Spence and to be today a better corporate competitor. If you haven't already done so, remember to download the notes I took from today's session on corporatecompetitorpodcast.com/110. Those notes include a reflection question so that you can incorporate our podcast into your personal growth plan. If you could share one habit, one thing you've done consistently that allowed you to separate yourself from your competitors, what would it be? In my 30-year career, 2,500 of the greatest athletes, coaches, and leaders answered that question for me.
This is Don Yeager, who did that article I was telling you about.
Don, Dave Sims with Coach K. How you doing?
Hey, Don. How you doing, my man? Great, sir.
What they gave to me is what I'm giving to you in my online course, Journey to Greatness. Through engaging storytelling and on-demand videos, you will learn the 16 habits that will jumpstart your personal growth. I will instruct you on how to apply these winning characteristics to your life through custom workbook exercises. We are slashing the price for our podcast listeners. Lifetime access to Journey to Greatness is normally $399, but for our podcast listeners, it will be $49 with the code podcast at checkout. Click the banner on corporatecompetitorpodcast.com to enroll. Thanks for listening to the show. I would be so grateful if you left us a rating and a review. We will be rolling out a new episode every Wednesday. To be the first to listen, subscribe to the podcast on our website, corporatecompetitorpodcast.com. Plus, as a thank you gift, you will receive a free chapter from one of my best-selling books on the habits of high-performing teams. Stay in touch by connecting with me on social media at Don Yeager, Yaeger, on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. Until next week, I appreciate you.